I left, and yet I was still hurting. I was still carrying the shame, still carrying the guilt. I was still second guessing myself and still worried about disappointing my family and other people. I was figuring out the rules and expectations that I was told that I had to live. And for a long time, I wondered, am I struggling because I left the church? Maybe you've asked yourself the same question. Maybe you left church years ago. You know, leaving the church was the right decision, and yet you still feel that longing. Something still feels unfinished. I'm Crystal Hamilton. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, author of Drowning in Doctrine, and creator of Redefine Family. Before I was a therapist, before I understood trauma and the nervous system, I was trying to figure out what was happening to me. I left the Mormon Church over 20 years ago. Leaving was an important decision in my life. It was necessary. It was the beginning of becoming more authentic, more myself, but it was not the end of my healing. And I think that's something many people don't talk enough about. We talk about leaving, deconstructing, we talk about discovering problems, we talk about questioning beliefs, we talk about making decisions to make new friends. But what happens after? What happens when you close that chapter? Because the church may no longer be telling you what to do, what to think, how to dress. Sometimes those messages are still alive inside of you. When I first left, I think part of me believed there would be this moment where all of a sudden, poof, clear, I'm fine. Like, okay, I got life figured out. I'm free. And I can finally move forward. I can finally be authentic. And in some ways, that was true. I did have more freedom. I felt like I could question and I could be more myself, but there was still a feeling lost because healing is complicated. Because when you spend years, decades inside a belief system that shaped your identity, you just don't walk away when you walk out that building. You walk away from a whole framework of understanding yourself. You walk away from roles you were taught you had to fulfill. You walk away from a version of yourself that other people may have known you as. Then you have to ask yourself, who am I now? That question sounds exciting and scary at the same time. I still had fears I couldn't always explain. I still had moments where I questioned myself. I still had that feeling of, am I doing something wrong? And that's a really hard place to be because from the outside, people may think, but you left, you're fine now. And sometimes even I thought that myself. While I'm still affected, why am I still affected by this? One of the hardest things about leaving a church is that sometimes you don't understand how you're affected. You may think, I made the decision. I know why I left. I know I don't believe this any longer. So, why do I still feel this way? That question came up for me many, many times. And I want to explain something that I wish I had known 25 years ago. Our beliefs don't just live in our thoughts, they become connected to our emotions, our relationships, and how we see ourselves. So for many of us, religion wasn't something we just did on a Sunday afternoon. It shaped our entire identity. It influenced what made us a good person. It made us worthy. What choices were safe? What choices were dangerous? And how we understood success, how we understood failure, how we understand ourselves. So when you leave, you're not just changing your opinion. You're you're rebuilding a relationship with yourself. Happen. Even after you leave, those messages still show up, not because you believe them, but because they were told to you for many years, practiced and over. And anything we practice repeatedly becomes familiar, and our brain loves familiar, even when familiar isn't healthy. One thing I had to learn was the difference between guilt and growth. Because for many people leaving religion, guilt is a constant companion. You may feel guilty for disappointing your parents, disappointing your family, changing your beliefs, setting boundaries, and choosing a different path, taking care of yourself. You may feel guilty. And guilt is a warning sign like, stop, you're doing something wrong. But sometimes guilt is not telling you that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's simply telling you you're just doing something different. And those aren't the same thing. I remember having to learn that making a choice for myself did not automatically mean I was hurting someone else. This was a really hard lesson for me to learn because when you are taught to prioritize, and me setting a boundary is, it's not my responsibility to take care of someone else's feelings when the boundary helps me stay safe. So learning how to take care of myself is not selfish. Healing is not just one big breakthrough. It's really just like a small moments, small choices that really have to be mindful of taking. And one of the biggest things was learning to trust myself. And this is not, a graceful progression of healing. It's going to be bumpy, it's going to be rough, and that's okay. So learning to figure out what I actually believe, what values align with me, what kind of person do I want to be, what values do I want to live by. And these are the questions. They're very uncomfortable, because when you spent a lot of time with somebody telling you the answers, it can be overwhelming to figure out what you truly want. And it's really freeing. So, another thing that really helped me learning this healing was being compassionate to myself. So, why did I believe those beliefs? Why did I stay in the church? And why did it take me so long to leave the church? Why am I still hurt? So it's not, why was I like that? But the question is, what do I need to heal? What am I trying to protect? What am I trying to understand? The version of me who was in the church, who struggled, she was doing the best she could at the time. And I think for many people, we need to hear that. We need to be compassionate to ourselves because we judge ourselves for past actions when really we just need to be compassionate. So we're all trying to make sense of our world. We are not starting over. This isn't square one. So if you're watching this and you've been out of religion for years, 20 years, like I have, uh, and you're still finding yourself affected by the church teachings, I want you to know that there is healing and that you aren't starting from square one. And this will be a continued journey. Healing does not erase the past. Healing helps you to integrate the past into present day. So the goal is to become whole, to become one, to really become your authentic self. Leaving the Mormon Church was one of the biggest decisions I made in my life, and it was only the beginning. The real work has been learning how to thrive, how to live without fear, how to live without shame, how to live without needing other people's approval, and learning how to trust myself. And this is a journey I'm guessing many of us are on, not becoming, someone new. It's discovering the person who was there all along.